to the show and fall at your door. We got that info for you. Touchdown on that play and buy anything. More than just a podcast for you.
Next question. The NBA has had numerous close games in the bubble, and there's a lot of bad shooting or lack of execution. Do you think that the NBA coaches are effective in coaching star players?
I feel some coaches are effective. This whole bubble thing is just brand new, and I just think everybody's just tired. I mean, they signed up to play in front of thousands of fans. They're playing in front of Zoom fans. I mean, they're stuck. They can't. Their life as being normal is not normal right now. You know, so they're just going through the motions. They're trying to give us entertainment, and I appreciate it. I just think right now, I think they're just tired and they're bored. They're just playing right now. You know, a lot of bad calls, a lot of bad decision making. Like, this is the worst it's been in the NBA, to me anyway, in my opinion. I think once it gets back to normal, like, the bubble's now, so when the season start back up, are they going to continue to bubble with everybody, or they're going to go back to normal? That's what we got to wait and see.
I agree with that. I question if it's really the lack of coaching, but just the sense that the atmosphere and environment has changed, and these players and coaches can't go home to their family and see their family. So I think it has more to do with just what Terrence said, that the environment has changed, and that it's not about coaching or even talent, but just the whole atmosphere is different.
I'm inclined to agree to a certain extent. I think that clearly not all coaches can manage things. Shameless plug here. One of the things that I do at Sports Farm University is something called a flight assessment in the flight program. And because self-awareness is one of the most critical aspects of success. And I do not know that the coaches nor the players, if they're aware enough to understand going in, who's going to succeed in this type of environment. Some people are extroverts. They feed off of energy. They need other people. Other people are introverts, and they don't have to have a person at all. This is the perfect situation for them. Did they take the time to really know their players, and do their players really know themselves to understand that, okay, if I'm an introvert, I'm good. You might have to check in on me once in a while, but I like solitude. I'm okay with this. But if I'm the extrovert and I need people, especially if I need my family, what did you do to ensure that I have that source of energy that I actually need? Or I think it was Paul George that came out last week or the week before that said that being in the bubble really impacted his mental health, which took a toll on the way that he performed. I do think that not all coaches are the same. But having said that, I don't necessarily believe that they took the steps to ensure that they were aware of how being in a bubble would impact the players, because mental toughness and mental health do have an impact on performance. Coach Toliver?
Yeah. I don't want this to sound like I'm trying to downplay this question, but, you know, coaches go through multiple changes every year, way before COVID came in. Now, because COVID is so big, because it's creating a situation where we're losing a lot of lives, and everybody's, really scared about that. But if you can control what you can control, I used to hear this from every coach that I've ever talked about. Control what you can control. Do your part. Mm-hmm. So if they're engaged and doing their part, and just like anything else, the NCAA or the NBA or the NFL throw at these players, and, they throw at these coaches, they got to be all in. Now, I'm not saying that it's bad coaching. I'm just saying, somebody said earlier that some can handle more than others. I'm using my own words. Some can't handle a whole lot of stuff. This stuff that's happening now, is really all about your mindset, I think, in that business when you're dealing with lives that plays the plays of sports. So if you as a head coach and assistant coaches are not dialed in to not allow this stuff to impact what you truly do, and just follow the rules and the process of your school or your program, everything, it won't be so intensified. But I think some people struggle with that because it's just been so much. And then they always been told, in most cases, from the NFL and the NBA or the NCAA or the conferences, what to do, how to do it, and when to do it, and what not to do. So now a lot of ownership is put on like everybody. And that's the biggest shock that I know for most coaches and most programs that they're struggling with. And when you get that, that's a lot of interference. So when you get a lot of interference, you get a lot of distortion, you get a lot of unbalanced things, you get poor organization and poor structure. And then it takes a strong person or a strong group or organization to pull that thing together real quick if you're focused, if your mindset is right. And I think a lot of folks have moved real slow with this, but not taking away that the COVID was extremely serious. It was taking millions of lives. I mean, a lot. But control what you can control. I don't want to downplay the question or the problem, but you got to stay in your lane sometimes and just do what you're supposed to do and keep it moving.
That makes sense. So we're lined up. Mental health does matter, and we don't do a very good job with mental toughness or preparing or dealing with mental health issues. So the next question is probably one of my favorite parts of the show. I really learn every time I have to answer one of these questions. This is from our Tweener series. So the offensive tackle versus defensive tackle. We want to talk about the traits and the measurements as they transition to college.
Well, for me, I have a bit of experience in that area because Paris played on defense since he was 5 years old. And he didn't transition into the offensive side of the ball till his sophomore year. So from age 5 until 14, he played defense. And the position he played the most on defense was defensive end. He didn't play defensive tackle, but he played defensive end. And he played that position until his sophomore year, and the coach moved him to left tackle. And Paris, the only experience that Paris ever had on offense is in Little League playing tight end and just blocking. So he didn't have much experience on that side of the ball. And the reason why Paris transitioned to that size, because he outgrew his position. He grew over 4 inches in a matter of 6 months his freshman year in high school. And so he went from 6'3" to 6'7". And his high school coach at the time told me that if he was to play at the next level, play in college, that he would not play defensive end at 6'7", that he will play tackle. And so he wanted to make that transition at that time so he would have time to learn the position. And I learned quickly that between the two positions for Paris, only can speak for, from his perspective and his experience, is that he had a lot of upside because of him growing, very coachable kid. Academics is very important. I know colleges are looking to make sure that a student can perform academically, and his willingness to take risks. So, and I can also say this, because of him playing defensive end, that helped him to become a great left tackle because he was able to move, he was able to bend, he had great feet. So for me, that's what I think the traits were for him. And again, only based off of my experience with him, because I did not see him growing 4 inches in 6 months and transitioning from a defensive end to a left tackle.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And, Ms. Johnson, I applaud you with that because you paid attention to it. And then somebody kind of like just raised the flag to you. But, I coach youth football, been doing it for 17 years. And, I've been around kids so much to where you can just tell. And this is going to happen to you because you're going to be like, that kid, you just kind of like zone in on it. But the difference between the offense and deep. Kelvin, when he came up through youth football, he started off playing linebacker and tight end. Mm-hmm. He ran the ball, he blocked, and then he played linebacker. So he was always in the trenches, always in the trenches. And he ran the ball, did a lot of things. But then he ended up transitioning in high school his freshman year as a receiver and then to corner. All in 1 year. went from the age of 13 to 14 being, I don't know, he probably was about 5'11" to 6'1" in no time. So the growth spurt, I know, that's a shocking thing for most parents because they've never been through it. And then when they see it, they be like, what good night? What the world happened?
Right.
So I kind of believe the doctors at sometimes when they talk about, you know, what a kid could potentially be at. So some of the stuff is good to feed off of. But the difference between those two positions, in my experience, has always been, I notice it at the youth level before they even get to high school, what they can potentially be. And a lot of coaches lean on what they're capable of doing, the intangibles that a kid has to play either or both. In my environment where I coach at, a lot of our kids play both sides of the football. That's the way we coach and teach. If you can help that team in 1 or 2 or 3 spots on either side of the ball, we're coaching it to, we're pushing the kid to it, and we're coaching them to it. And those kids end up being great players when they get to high school, get to college, and transition into the NFL when it comes to football. So, you know, if somebody can play offensive tackle and they got the intangibles, one, the height, the weight, the size, the reach, you know, the athleticism, you know, the technique, coaches will see it and they will pull it and come to you and say, hey, this guy's going to be a DN.
Yes.
He's not going to be an offensive tackle. The thing for your son is that what I like is that he started on defense. So he understands what DNs do.
Yes.
And now he has the aggression and the toughness to hold all that off, whether it's a defensive tackle, a linebacker, or DN. That makes it so much more attractive to any college coach or NFL coach when a kid has that. And you know what? That's part of his resume. And I'm going to tell you, I did it with Kelvin all day when he was transitioning from high school to college. I gave him all of the answers to him in youth football, every bit of them. So I applaud you. Good measures, though.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. But I think the biggest thing that I want parents to understand is that you really have to lean on the coaches and believe them. So if you have a coach telling you that your child is better fit at playing another position, they don't have any skin in the game. So you just have to trust them. And when Paris's coach told me that he needs to play left tackle, I didn't question it because I looked at him as the expert. And I'm grateful that I didn't question him because Paris ended up being the #1 tackle in the country, #1 in the state. And I appreciate him sharing that. And I just took it and ran with it. And Paris agreed. And Paris is coachable. So he said, Coach, tell me what I need to do to be on this field and I'll be great. And that's what he did.
Well, I'm gonna throw an argument in this wrench. There's a leader on this call that tried to go against that concept. Wouldn't that be right, Mr. Wade? I love picking on Randy about his son because he said, "Oh, my son will never be a cornerback. He's not no cornerback. He's the #1 corner in the country. What the world?"
Yeah.
I think in this instance, one, I'm going to say I never paid attention to a man's hips until I started watching the big guys at the combine. And they talk about the ability to flip your hips, the ability to be shifty. So who knew that my little combine watching experience would actually benefit me today? So I'm going to say my kid didn't play on the line at all, but I went out to do some research because y'all know how I do. And what was interesting is, again, it's what's required. I found that when you get to the defensive tackle, even the defensive end, they're supposed to be lighter, maybe more elusive, faster, having the ability to very quickly shed the people on the line. They want them to try to get, even with the D-line, they want them to try to make holes so that people can get into the backfield. Whereas on the offensive side, they were probably some of the biggest players on the field, large, However, with the size, you had to have agility, you had to have balance, you had to have stamina and the ability to really run in a straight line. So when I was doing the research, it made sense to me. I don't know if y'all watched the combine, but Mekhi Becton, he ran so fast for a big guy. And I was like, that's why. It's a desirable skill set. So like what they're being tasked to do is a little bit different, and the level of intelligence that you have to play either position. I don't think I understood or appreciated the intelligence until after I had to do some research for this question.
Can I say one more thing? I know we probably have to move on, but one of the things I love about the offensive line is that with that position is so unique is that they operate as one position. Even though you have 5 players on the line, they operate as one. And I love that about that position because they have to be in sync. They have to be unified. And I think that's one of the unique positions on the line.